Yes, thank you very much. So perhaps some of you have noticed that I changed the English title slightly because there were new developments in the meantime. So I would just like to try to explain in short terms what I will be actually presenting here today. So just like any public project, water supply systems can become a political project which promote particular political, ideological, and similar messages. So the opening ceremonies of many of them are usually accompanied by speeches and newspaper reports and so on, which reflect the prevailing beliefs of the respective era. And also the inscriptions and decorations on public fountains, public wells, could also be used in a similar way. So this political aspect of water supply systems is what will be discussed in this presentation. So, the growth of urban settlements and rise in infectious diseases, which spreads through the water in the wells, dictated the modernization of the water supply systems in the second half of the 19th and in the beginning of the 20th century. In Slovenia, the booming construction of these systems began at the end of the 19th century when some of the largest cities started building them. Water pipelines were financed mostly by local communities, which, however, also tried to have provincial and state authorities to assess them as economically beneficial, and in that case, they would also co-finance them. In such cases, the ceremonial openings of the new water supply systems became at the same time a manifestation of public gratitude and loyalty to the Austro-Hungarian authorities, and more specifically to the emperor himself, so in this case, Francis or Franz Joseph. Many so-called Jubilee water supply systems were opened on the anniversaries of his reign, especially in 1908, when there was the 60th anniversary of his rule, and at some openings there were also commemorative monuments unveiled. For example, at the opening of the Bela Krajina water supply system, where they put up a monument with the emperor's depiction and his motto, Viribus Unitis. Even though gratitude to the emperor was at the forefront of many such festivities, the merits of the local dignitaries who were responsible for the creation of the water supply systems were also not forgotten. It was usually mayors, priests, judges, or other prominent people from the local community who provided provincial or state funds, or they most actively encouraged and managed construction works. So at these openings, such persons were usually singled out in ceremonial speeches. Some were given prizes, or their names were written on commemorative plaques, which were often used in the Austro-Hungarian monarchy to commemorate engineering and construction achievements. So this is the example for Ljubljana, which lists the engineer who planned the water supply system for Ljubljana, the mayor Peter Graseli, and Ivan Hribar, who was the head of the committee for building the water supply and future well-respected mayor of Ljubljana, and later he also got his own memorial dedicated just to him for his work on the Ljubljana water supply. In the rare cases where the construction of the water supply was generously financed by just one private patron, there was also no lack of public thanks for his action. An example of that is in Radovljica, so a city in Gorinska. At the ceremonial opening of the local water supply in 1908, they particularly highlighted the merits of the philanthropist Josipina Hočevar, who contributed a good portion of the money for the installation of the water supply in her hometown. So the grateful townspeople had a commemorative fountain put up to her on this day, making this one of the earliest monuments to women in Slovenia in general, and also a rare case of a monument to a living person from that time. Then to skip toward the interwar period, where of course the majority of Slovenia was a part of the kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, later the kingdom of Yugoslavia. In that time, local communities of course still sought state support for the construction of water supply systems. Often a great deal of self-initiative was shown by the locals themselves, who formed water supply cooperatives, within which they organized and managed the construction. So in this way, the former Austro-Hungarian tendency to celebrate the individuals most deserving of new water supply systems faded somewhat. A novelty in the interwar era was the more open use of grand opening ceremonies for party political propaganda. So the ban of the Drava Banovina, for example, was regularly present at these events and also spoke at these festivities while promoting, of course, his party's ideals. Similarly, as during the time of Austria-Hungary, the opening of supply systems in the interwar kingdom was considered an opportunity to confirm loyalty to the country and to the, of course, new royal dynasty, in this case the Karađorđević dynasty, and to express gratitude for the economic modernization led by the government. So one of the most interesting cases I found was this example from Sivnica. So when a water supply system was being built there in the summer of 1931, the municipal council approved a proposal to ask the royal court for permission to name the new acquisition the King Alexander water supply system. However, their request was apparently not approved in Belgrade. The water supply systems maintained their propaganda function even during the occupation in the Second World War. At the openings of the supply systems in the German occupied territory, it was usually promised that the party and the state will continue to support such projects. On the other side of the border, in Ljubljana province, under the Italian occupation, came up with a plan to build quite a luxurious fountain in Ljubljana's Kongresni Trg as a sort of a symbol of fascist rule in the occupied territory. However, this plan never came to fruition and is only preserved in a couple of sketches such as this one. The year 1945 brought a new political turning point for the country. In socialist Yugoslavia, all kinds of modernization projects, beginning from electrification, road paving, telephone lines, and industrialization, to laying of sewers and water supply, were indicators which the country used to prove its progress. Workers competed to meet and exceed quotas and contributed many hours of voluntary work. In accordance with this, the construction and opening of water supply systems was also massive, which, due to the already fairly wide systems in larger settlements, was limited mainly to smaller settlements and villages. In the first post-war years, most of the work was done in the form of youth work brigades, and throughout the entire period of Yugoslavia's existence, voluntary work by locals who built their own water supply systems remained popular. Many state bodies and organizations, but above all local municipalities, were able to help local people with the financing of construction. At least from the 1960s onwards, soldiers of the Yugoslav People's Army also helped with building many water supply systems. The newly built supply systems were yet again seen as a reflection of the high level of attention that the local and national political authorities give to the economic progress of the population. The speeches at the openings were full of praise for the solidarity of the locals who helped with the project. On the other side, of course, many newspapers criticized the locals who did not participate in financial contribution or manual labor, thus publicly shaming them as enemies of progress. Credit for the construction of water supply systems became even more dispersed under socialism than in the pre-war era. In the first years after the Second World War, the most praise was given by the press to the youth and to the workers who built the water supply systems. A couple of plaques have also been unveiled, such as this one, where you can notice that the words communist and communal are spelled wrong. For the first time, these systems were presented in the newspapers as a project that would not have existed without those who physically built it. From the 1960s onwards, a more neutral reporting became established, combining the merits of both the workers or local people who physically built the water supply system and the politicians and the engineers who planned and co-financed it. Deserving individuals usually had the honor of turning on the faucet and being the first to drink the glass of water that flowed from it. The openings of water supply systems and wells in socialism were often combined with the celebration of the historical foundations of the country, especially the partisan struggle during the Second World War. Similar to the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, many water supply systems were opened on national holidays or anniversaries of events from the partisan liberation struggle. Since the mid-1950s, openings of supply systems were often put together with the unveiling of monuments and commemorative plaques to the events from the partisan struggle, and also with gatherings of partisan veterans. The next stage in combining these utilitarian and commemorative functions of water supply was to combine these functions in a single object, and that would mean the creation of the monument fountain. Partisan monuments in the form of fountains were not that rare in Yugoslavia. There were several such examples in Slovenia. Perhaps the most famous of them is the work of famous architect Jože Pličnik in Črna na Koroškem, the one on the left. And there were plenty of others too. So on the right is another example from Kamnik, which is dedicated to the 8 hostages who were shot on that location. And another example from the littoral region, from Portorož, which is dedicated to partisan sailors. The motif of water or the fountain was also part of many memorial parks across Slovenia, or cemeteries or other architecturally arranged Yugoslav places of remembrance of the Second World War. So here are a couple of examples from Ljubljana, including the monuments of the revolution in the top right corner, which used to include a body of water which is not present anymore, and another example from Velenje, which also still exists. A specific form of marking the Yugoslav state ideology, even though it's not present in Slovenia, but I would like to at least mention it, is more characteristic of Serbia, was the installation of fountains which symbolized the brotherhood and unity of all the Yugoslav citizens, mostly with 5 and then 6 figures, which would symbolize 5 nations or 6 republics of Yugoslavia. So here are a couple of examples from Belgrade and Paraćin. So to close off with the final political breakthrough for Slovenians in the 20th century, independence of Slovenia from Yugoslavia in 1991. In the new country, the construction of water supply systems continued, even if only to the most remote settlements that had not yet received infrastructure. So the ceremonies for the opening of water supply systems finally became a local affair, attended mostly by mayors, presidents of local communities, and also, after, of course, a period of absence under socialism, priests, while the state leaders were not present at such ceremonies. Credit for constructing these systems is no longer a particularly hot topic in newspaper reports, and it is generally accepted that these projects are the result of joint work of citizens, municipal management, and communal construction companies. Supply systems and wells have also become one of the indicators of the new pro-European Slovenian foreign policy. So, for example, in 1993, they unveiled a sculpture called Europe in front of the University of Ljubljana, which was, of course, a telling indicator of that time frame. And eventually, when Slovenia joined the European Union, the Union became an important co-financier of the construction of many water supply networks, which is also noted on some of the new wells that were built with this financial help. So most of the wells that were unveiled in Slovenian cities in the last 3 decades have the marks of local historical, cultural, or geographical identity. So, for example, the well in Kranj has the coat of arms, the eagle on top of it. the well in Naklo on the right side is dedicated to a famous doctor, Gregor Voglar, which was born there. And at the bottom is a modernist well from Solkan, which imitates the flow of River Socha, already mentioned today, between hills in that region. And also in the last years, we can also note the rise of drinking fountains, which have become a popular addition of urban environments, and also became a space for promoting local history and identity. So to conclude, the grand political and national narratives of the past have therefore lost their influence when it comes to politicalness of public wells and ceremonies of opening water supply systems. And instead, these have become a place for promoting especially local identity and its own past, and not anymore anything of national scope. Thank you.